everyone. I'm your host Nandini Ray, and you are listening to the Maitri podcast between friends, conversations with Maitri. Today, we will be focusing on a topic many of us have lived, but only a few of us have openly talked about: the cultural conflicts between South Asian parents and their children. Whether it's clashing over career choices, dating, emotional expression, or even mental health issue. These tensions often leave deep emotional marks and sometimes even can lead to abuse and violence. To help us unpack all of these, I am joined by our guest Shalini Dayal. Shalini is a licensed family therapist and has 30 years of clinical experience in the mental health profession. She has worked extensively with South Asian youth and adults navigating issues related to relational disconnect, communication problems, depression, grief, stress, cultural adjustments, parenting, divorce, and couple counseling. At today's show, we will explore the roots of intergenerational cultural conflicts, how they affect our mental health, and what healing can look like when both generations are ready to listen. Let's get into it. Welcome, Shalini. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Nandini. Thank you for inviting me, and it is an honor and a pleasure. I appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you. Shalini, let's start with the big picture. Why do topics like independence, dating, career choices, and mental health so often turn into tension points in some South Asian families?
Well, I think when you're talking about tension points, you're talking about two different generations. Often in my work, I see adults and children, whether they're under 18 or over 18, the first generation and the following generations do have a lot of different perspectives on topics like independence or dating or career choice because of some very deeply held cultural values. The generation of immigrants that come to this country from South Asia who have been born and raised in different countries, they prioritize family cohesion, sacrifice tradition over individual expression. The autonomy and personal choices can be seen as threats to the collective identity. So autonomy and independence are seen as very Western perspective and very much against the collectivist mindset and value systems a lot of South Asian families bring in when they come to this country. In their countries of origin, the collectivist mindset is important because it ensures the survival of the most. Here, where in this country, where there is not a problem with resources, where resources are available, there's more focus on the individual mindset, on the individual independence, autonomy. And so it creates a clash between two different worlds, two different cultural values. So often it happens the first generation that comes here as immigrants versus the ensuing generations that are born and raised here, they see things differently. So it creates cultural and generational clashes. Mental health happens to be fall into that category as well. Mental health in many South Asian countries is not prioritized because of lack of resources. Doesn't mean it's not there. Mental health issues and struggles are not there. They're absolutely there. Unfortunately, because of the lack of resources, it's not a priority. Here, because there's an abundance of resources and the impact of mental health is understood and talked about and taught about. So there's a lot more focus on helping people with mental health issues. So that's why the older generation sometimes feels, what is this? And a focus on mental health, it may be seen as something that is weak because immigrants come here to get a better life, to have a better life for themselves and the following generations. So focus on issues or struggles with the mind are seen as a sign of weakness. Cannot be weak, and I hear this. You cannot be weak from, and in the And there's no such thing as depression, or there's no such thing as anxiety. So you have to be strong, so you have to survive. So again, it's the whole process of the first generation and that come here as immigrants and the following generations' perspectives, lived experiences, and cultural values that cause this disconnect between the two generations on whether it's independence or dating, on autonomy, career choice, and mental health.
I have two teen boys. So one day I was having some conversation on their career choices. And one of them told me that, Mama, your generation, most people, they focus on professions that bring prestige and financial stability. For us, we see careers that aligned with our passion. And that actually gave me some food for thought. Probably he's right, and I should let it go. I mean, we had a good conversation on that prestige and financial stability. We cannot ignore that. It is also important in our life, but also important to listen to your passion, listen to your heart. Because if I'm forcing someone doing something, if I'm forcing my son to do something that he is not interested and his mind and heart is not there, probably he will fail miserably. But if I'm letting him follow his own passion, probably he will bloom. So we need a lot of conversation on this topic. And sometimes I have seen that in my generation, we focus a lot on family honor. Log kya kahenge? What will people say? And but I don't know. I mean, how do ideas like that, like log kya kahenge? What will people say? Shape how South Asian parents approach their kids' choice. Because when I was having the conversation with my children, I was thinking that if in my family many children are pursuing a STEM career, but my one of my child is not interested at all in STEM career. So for a fraction of a second, it came to my mind that what will people say that in this family, this child will be the only one who is not following STEM career. But then I realized that is not how I should think. So what do you think?
If you're talking about the matter of prestige or how and what people will think, it does shape the perspectives of the generation that has come here because they have experienced it in their countries of origin. So it does shape their perspective, their value systems. It doesn't necessarily shape the perspectives and value systems of the children here. Because again, as I said earlier, because of the two different value systems, the collectivist versus the individual value systems, here the focus is on the fulfillment of the individual value systems. In countries of origin for most South Asian immigrants, and actually immigrants from other countries as well, especially developing countries, because of the collectivist culture, there is focus on survival. Having certain jobs, certain occupations like being a physician or a lawyer or an engineer is often seen as a guarantee into the middle class. See, survival is important in those countries because poverty is rampant. So that is seen as those professions are seen as a way into the middle class, a way into a more secure life for yourself and your children. And those values hold very true in those countries. And those are seen as pathways to success. So they're also real for that generation. Coming here, the children here don't focus so much on prestige or what others think because this culture talks about that and encourages people to be independent, to think independently, to follow their passions and interests, like your son said. So, because the focus of this culture, because of its resources that are there, it's encouraging the kids go follow your passion. The difficulty becomes is for the children and for the parents as well, like you said. For a moment, it did strike you that your child is doing things differently. Is so how do you balance your worries, anxieties based on your life experiences with supporting your child. And for now, most adult children, they also want to please their parents. So, how do they focus? The focus shifts on how do they find things that are fulfilling for them while they're still having a good relationship with their parents. Of course, there's always an aspect of wanting to please the parents and have their acceptance and validation. And that's for the parents to also be aware of that your children are still trying to please you and have make sure that you are happy with their choices while you're trying to support their choices so they can be happy in their lives.
Mm,
It's a
mm.
fine balance for
Yes,
both
it's a fine
generations,
balance.
and it's not always easy.
Yeah, it is not easy. It is not
Mhm,
easy. As a parent, I can say that.
mhm.
But since I've been associated with Maitri for almost 14 years now, and sometimes it bothers me when I see that in our community, that log kya kahenge, family honor, that is, I mean, too big of a thing. Like, we see many survivors of domestic violence are suffering as they're told by their family members that what will people say if you break the relationship, if you leave your home. But they don't get it that that home they're in is abusive home, and the relationship is violent or abusive relationship. But many times family members, they just, or friends, they just tell them that what will people say if you break the relationship. Or some South Asian youth teens, they are told that do not date. I mean, one of my son's friends, she was telling me that we have been told several times that do not date. If you date and you doesn't go well and you break up, then you will be marked as a loose character or something like that. But suddenly when we are 28, 29 years old, they expect us to find the right match. And that is, how do we do that? We are not magician. We cannot find the right match who is perfect and fit into all categories that my family want. But unless we meet people, unless we date, how do we know that we are in a healthy relationship or not? How do we find our right match? But that's a dilemma. I don't know. Sometimes we focus a lot on log kya kahenge, what will people say, especially South Asian girls. They have to adjust. They are adjusting a lot with this kind of situation. So for Shalini, you work with youth a lot. So for young South Asian who are growing up in this country, in the West, how do these cultural conflicts show up in their mental health and everyday lives? Do you have any examples?
And that's a very good question about how do these differing perceptions and conflicts show up in the mental health and impact the mental health of our, whether they are children or even the parents. And that goes a little bit deeper into the role of shame. I think you mentioned about how, especially like Maitri and Narika and Save, who work with women and children who are impacted by domestic violence across different communities, including South Asian communities, we do see women bear the burden of keeping the family honor. Izzat. Log kya kahenge is also about the woman will bring dishonor to the
Mm,
family if they don't follow certain norms.
mm,
When it comes to dating before marriage, it's about the woman shouldn't be having sex. They
mm,
shouldn't be having sex. I do this workshop with Save. I've done several for several years with their teens and youth on sex before marriage. And we do this survey. We do a survey every time we do the workshop. And so there are youth between the ages of 12 to 24 who attend the workshop. And most of them tell me that their parents do not want them to have sex. And like you mentioned, before marriage. And at the same time, they want them to find the perfect match. Now, remember, we are in a very different culture where those norms don't always apply. The culture here has very different norms and expectations. So, because of the association of shame around sex, shame around for women to not stray out, not step out, and or speak up if she is being abused. The threat is the same. It's the threat of shame. Don't have sex and don't bring dishonor by speaking up about your abuse in a relationship. I'm sure you've heard of a woman being told to keep it quiet, keep it within the family. Don't say it to anything. So all this brings a tremendous amount of shame and guilt to the young adults and to women, or even of the first generation, the generation that has come here as immigrants, to not talk about their abuse. Women are trained and socialized to belong to someone else's family, and often are told by their parents, their families of origin, that if you have a problem, you cannot come back. There is no place for you in our home. We will not support you.
Yeah.
So you have to bear whatever happens to you. So is it any surprise that we pass on those same thoughts, perspectives to the younger generation? And the younger generation here says, what? This doesn't help us. This makes us feel bad about ourselves. This makes us feel like we are an imposter, creates anxiety, creates depression. And just for the younger generation, but also for the women in your shelters and the women that you help. They are also struggling with this message to keep their family's honor, to keep their family's acceptance while trying to take care of themselves. The youth are saying the same things. We don't want to deal with this shame. When this is imposed, though, it does create a lot of mental health issues. It does lead to isolation, to depression, to anxiety, suicidal ideations, and self-harm.
Yeah, a lot of youth in our community, I think they grow up feeling caught between their family's traditions, expectations, and the peer pressure around them. Like they're going out meeting, friends at school and colleges, and it's that push and pull can be really tough. As you said, that can affect mental health. I remember someone told me once that balancing your own identity, your own happiness with your family's values and expectations can feel like walking on a tightrope. So which leads to my next question: how can individuals balance their personal identity with the collective values of their family and culture without creating any tension in their family? I know it's a tough
That's a
question.
big ask without creating tension. Now, that depends on each family, on each individual in the family. Tensions are going to be inevitable. Tensions, disagreements in any relationship are normal. What is important is how you navigate those differences. To say and expect, how can we navigate these differences without tension, may be a big ask and may be very difficult to achieve. What she's saying is, how can we navigate these differences, these tensions, where both parties can come to a compromise, some understanding? So the compromise and the understanding has to be the responsibility of both. With young children, it is the responsibility of the parents because the children are not adults. When the children are old enough, when they're adults, when they're independent, it is the responsibility of both generations to be able to have conversations peacefully, to work towards and negotiate a compromise, to show awareness, compassion, both sides, and communicate. So you can bridge those generational gaps. It's finding ways to honor family values while also honoring the individual's need for independence. It's honoring both sides. If the expectation is only one way, you have to honor my family value, but I'm not going to honor your needs, then the relationship will suffer.
What you were saying, I am a parent, as I said, so I kind of thinking it needs a lot of clarity, lot of understanding, calmness, and empathy, and probably mutual respect to give the space to each other. So I'm being selfish here, Shalini. I am learning. I'm discussing these things because I am a parent and I want to share that podcast with my kids, my teens, so that they also understand that I'm trying. I'm trying my best to understand their situation, and they also need to do the same, so that we have mutual
Mhm.
understanding and respect. And I believe that this podcast will help many parents, South Asian parents like me, and children like my kids. So thank you so much for sharing all these insights and your experience with us. So my question, another question I have is: are there culturally sensitive ways to set boundaries with South Asian parents, and how do you guide your clients through that process?
So when the parents come in, it's teaching them, well, a lot of the things that I just mentioned with you is talking about conditioning, cultural conditioning, understanding the different individualistic versus collectivist cultures, also understanding their own process
Mm,
and helping them take accountability for what is happening for them, including their worries and fears. A lot of time, older generations coming as immigrants want to hold on to their cultural values and are very fearful of letting go, feeling
mm,
that if their children assimilate in this culture, they will lose their cultural identity. So
mm,
it's working with the parents and helping parents and the children navigate their collectives, their cultural identity they create together and separately. So using words like using more relational language, which is where you emphasize love, gratitude, and like you said, mutual respect.
mm,
So it's important for the families, for the parents, and like us for older children to understand, like you said, parents are also trying their best. So having mutual empathy, compassion, and also being mindful of not shaming and blaming.
mm,
When the relationship between a parent and child, irrespective of age, whether they're 14 or whether they're 4 or 14 or 40, if it is based on love, compassion, empathy, respect,
mm,
those things are going to be negotiable and you will be able to navigate the differences. But the
mm.
foundation has to be laid.
So is this the way we can unlearn harmful patterns without feeling like we are abandoning our own culture? How do we
Well,
unlearn?
is it about unlearning or is it about evolving and growing?
Wow.
So that's what I think. That instead of unlearning, think about evolving and growing. And I'm saying that as a parent also. I went to
Mm,
school for psychology. I've worked with kids from a very long time. What my kids taught me, no book could have taught me. What I
mm,
learned from my children as a person and as a parent, no one, their words or their experiences could have taught me. So I've learned to grow with my kids at every stage of their lives. And now they're adults and I'm still growing with them as they're growing. So think about how I tell parents, it's not about unlearning. Well, you learned what you did because of circumstances you were in. Now you're in different circumstances. So how do you evolve with your children? How do you grow with your kids? How do you learn with them? How do you develop with them? Just like you're nurturing them, it's also about learning from them and nurturing yourself as
mm,
well. So
wonderful.
the other thing I say, I know parents are very hard on themselves. I do tell parents that parenting is a hard thing, it's the hardest job. It's
Mm,
easy to develop a career, go to school, learn, read some books, and have a career. It's the
mm,
hardest thing being a parent. So cut yourself some slack. Be kind and compassionate to yourself, just like you are with your children. And then continue to learn. And if you make a mistake, take responsibility,
mm.
take ownership, apologize, and continue to evolve and grow.
Yeah, I like that the way you said that respectful communication is important and no shaming and blaming. So sometimes parents they forget that they kind of compare their children with other children, or they, as in a way, they're shaming and blaming their children, and we forget that that can have enormous mental health effect. can impact mental health, our mental health, or our children's mental health. So yeah, I personally am learning a lot from this conversation, and I'm sure that other will too. So before we wrap up, do you have any advice or encouragement for South Asian families navigating generational or cultural challenges?
Okay. As I said in the last answer, is be kind and compassionate to yourself and to your children. Take responsibility. And growing doesn't mean letting go of your culture. It means expanding to include the values from other culture, to include emotional care, respect, understanding, and grace for both generations. So I encourage the families to look at their differences as not as divides, but as opportunities for growth. Your children are different. What an amazing thing for you to learn and grow with them. So be curious, be compassionate, and remember that love is in many different ways, comes in many different ways. And that is the heart of intergenerational resilience and connection.
Mm. Actually, many parents they they cannot forget their life experiences, their trauma, their fears. So it creates enormous fear for them. They don't want their children to go through this that kind of trauma or bad life experiences. Probably that is the reason they are too harsh on themselves and their children. But as you said, that we have to evolve, we have to do our best to come out of that situation and see if we can help each other to grow together, as and create a happy, healthy, respectful home atmosphere. If we are happy and we are happy in our own home, then we will be able to make a good society,
Of
a
course.
society where everybody is respected, heard, and seen. So thank you so much, Shalini, for sharing your knowledge, experience, and time with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you again. I know it's been an honor and a pleasure to be on this podcast, and you have my information, so you know where to reach me. I have a website, and I also am the co-founder of a nonprofit where I do connect clients with clinicians who have expertise in their culture or language, so clients can find who they're looking for
Yes.
in their support in their journey. So yes, but thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
We can add all the information
Okay.
in our podcast description so that people can find you. And listeners, that was such a powerful and insightful conversation with Shalini Dayal. One of the biggest takeaways for me is that healing intergenerational conflict doesn't mean abandoning our culture. It means learning how to carry it forward with more awareness, compassion, and open dialogue, as Shalini said. If you found this episode meaningful, please share it with your network. And don't forget to follow the Maitri podcast Between Friends for more conversations on various topics that are important to build a culture of healthy relationships with parents, with our partners, with our children, and all family members. Find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Please follow Maitri Bay Area's social media pages. I am your host, Nandini Ray, signing off today. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself. Thank you.
This show is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as legal advice. Always consult an attorney for legal advice. Views expressed by guests of the radio show are individual opinions and not endorsed by Maitri.
Maitri is a free, confidential, non-profit organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area that helps families and individuals facing domestic violence. Don't suffer in silence. Call Maitri Helpline 1-888-8 Maitri. Visit our website maitri.org.